What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Marsh Talk for the second episode. I know it's been a little bit, had some life happening. Everybody knows how that is, but finally ready to get back in here and get Marsh Talk rolling. Today we got a guest who knows more about redfish than most people probably do. So we're going to talk about redfish today. We got Captain Ty Hibbs here. What's going on, man?
Yeah, appreciate it, dude. I've been wanting to do this for a while. I'm glad it finally worked out over here. So
yeah,
worked out talking about redfish as we're doing a bass tournament over here out of kayak. So
no kidding. We are one of the best bass fishers out there, though. So.
Yep, and Sam Rayburn. I've never been over here, so no redfish around here, though.
No, none that I'm aware of. So what's been going on, man?
Nothing much, dude. It's pretty much like we were talking about earlier, right now it's pretty much all hands on deck we're trying to finalize this notice of intent we have coming up. I've been beating this in everybody's brain. October 5th. I think we should be good. Everything should be good to go as far as finalizing it, but I'd really like a showing of people there at that one just to show, I always tell people, like, it's good to show your support to the commission because they kind of went out on a limb to do this,
Right.
We haven't had a change in redfish regulations in 35 years. You know, I tell everybody this is the biggest thing. Like, I tell everybody first, let's throw all the science and all that we have out the window. Like, that's completely irrelevant. How many more people do we have fishing for redfish compared to 35 years ago? How many more people do we have on the water compared to 35 years ago?
A whole lot more.
Just that alone, you should look at that and say, hey, maybe we should kind of do something about that,
Right.
I mean, everywhere else in the country and the world, things are changing, and we just got to get more of that that conservationist mindset as far as, and that doesn't mean throw everything back. I tell everybody all the time, like, we don't want it to be where you throw everything back.
Right.
We don't want it to get so bad to where one day they're like, we have so little redfish and we're just going to close it until it gets fixed. We don't want it to get to that.
Right.
I don't want to see a day where somebody can't go out and keep a few redfish. I mean, I don't keep any anymore. I haven't kept one in years, but it's just me. I felt like I can do my part to do that. I enjoy tagging them. I fish a bunch, and I'd rather eat, a couple speckled trout or sockeye, something like that. But, it's just, it takes everybody to kind of do their part. And then this is just one step in the right direction of a change we need, a change of mindset, and a change of regulations is definitely going to help persuade that mindset, and which is really what we need. And like I was telling you about earlier, man, I've been pushing this redfish thing pretty hard, and there's a lot of other things in this state, poor shrimpers are out there. They're getting pennies on the dollar, can barely afford to take their boats out. And there's stuff we can do for that.
Yeah.
But, there's this is a pretty big deal. This redfish thing, I've kind of taken it to heart the past couple of years, and I've been full steam ahead in it. And along with a bunch of other people, I'd have never guessed in a million years how many people would have been in support of what we've been doing. And, there's been many days where I was up there in Baton Rouge, like kind of standing alone on the hill saying, what the hell,
Yeah.
Is this really worth wasting a day that I could be paid, a day I could be hanging out with Nicole and Maverick, and just, and nobody else wants to listen. And then all of a sudden, get a few people behind it and get a few people that want to see a change. And part of it too, it's gotten definitely noticeably tougher, I mean, just red fishing in general for everybody. For me, sight fishing, the guys fishing bait. I mean, when the guys that are throwing dead shrimp on our popping cork are telling me, in Delacroix and all that, hey, like, it's kind of tough, have you been doing well? I'm like, when you're coming to me as a sight fishing guy, just looking for fish, pulling a boat around, saying, hey, it's kind of tough right now, like, we need to do something. And it's changed some minds in that way, which I don't really consider that a good thing, that it took, a couple noticeable bad fishing days to do that. But
right.
Then again, like I tell people, I still don't know anywhere else in this, that anywhere else in the country that has a redfish that has a better red fishery than ours.
Of course not.
Because still, we go out and have a great day red fishing. There's only how many redfish can you catch in a freaking day?
Yeah.
And we can go out and crush them. The good days are still unbelievable. We'll never you have an awesome day of red fishing. There's only so many fish you can catch in a day.
Yeah.
Where we're seeing it, where it's become noticeable, is the bad days.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, it used to be, a cloudy, windy day, just 5, 6, 7 years ago, even a cloudy, windy day for sight fishing was tough, and maybe we didn't get as many shots, but we still caught some fish. We still got some good shots. And now it's like, man, it's kind of, we've covered a lot of water and, crystal clear water, and we're just not seeing as many,
Mm-hmm.
and it definitely takes a toll on those tougher days. And then when it gets hot like it did this past summer and the water's low and the guys, throwing bait are struggling, they're still catching them. I mean, hopefully we never see a day where dead shrimp under a popping cork can't catch a redfish, because that would be a sad day in Louisiana
Yeah, no kidding.
for a lot of people. But no, I mean, when they're grinding, to catch 10, 15 fish, it's that we all know that's not Louisiana. That's not
Yeah.
what it was. It's not what it was 10 years ago. It's not what it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That's what I told people. I mean, we've had so many things against the redfish for the past 10 years, especially the past 5 years. And it's been monumental. It's been many more people in the water.
Mm-hmm.
We've definitely killed them faster than they can rebound. I mean, there's just so many things. We have pogie boats that are, killing a lot of fish and some of our breeder fish. We have changes in how people fish for them, from bow fishing. They're covering a lot more water than they used to because they're not seeing as many fish close by.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of people, trout fishing kind of got tough in that, really, like 2012 through probably 2017, when it was super fresh.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody just resorted to redfish and killed the hell out of a bunch of redfish. So we've had, and then you throw in, the things that we can't really do much about. And, you can have anybody you want come on here and talk to you about coastal restoration. And at the end of the day, there's some things that we will never be able to do to fix some parts of our coast. And that's just the sad truth of Louisiana.
Yeah.
But, we don't have really control of hurricanes taking some marsh away and taking, that detritus that gets built up in the marsh, where those little redfish, those eggs kind of float into the marsh, and then they have an area for those little fish to grow. You take a lot of that out after a big hurricane, then it leads to bad spawns. It leads to bad recruitment, when little fish, that's what, recruitment's your eggs that turn into your slot fish and all. And then your escapement is those fish that are becoming part of that spawning stock. So it all trickles down. I think it's just been a perfect storm to be everything against the redfish lately. We're kind of at that point where it's like, get on the train or get run over,
Right.
And I think a lot of people have woke up and saw that here's our chance to do something. And I think we're going to get something done, man. I really do.
I sure hope so. I mean, you're a charter guide for a living. You're out there most days of the week. You're seeing firsthand that there's less fish out there. You see on social media too, though, that there's people arguing the fact that, oh, no, there's no problem. There's still fish out there. But it comes down to it, there's data, scientific data, studies that have been done to prove that, I mean, it's not what it used to be. It's declining. Multiple reasons, not all of it is rod and reel fault. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it, but there's things that we can do. But tell me a little bit about some of the studies that have been done to prove that the redfish population has declined.
Yeah, I mean, so, in as far as the science goes on it, this is the first stock assessment that they've done on redfish, period. So, they do this stock assessment. They haven't really done any research on redfish in the past 35 years, just because there hadn't been a reason to. There hadn't been nobody's said, hey, like, we should look into this or change the limits or anything like that. So they do their stock assessment last fall. I think they finished it sometime in November or so, and they came out with the results, and it was pretty bad. I mean, as far as like spawning potential ratios goes, so a spawning potential ratio, just a quick kind of 1-2 about that. Your spawning potential ratio is what they use as far as figuring out how many spawning fish are in our stock, the percentage of fish that are spawning in our stock of redfish. So when you look at the stock assessment, you're going to see a decline in spawning potential ratio, that it's not being overfished with the spawning potential ratio. But when you look at the escapement rate, which is your slot fish that are making it into that spawning potential ratio class. So your slot fish that are growing, they're going to become spawning stock fish. That's your escapement rate. That's how we manage redfish in Louisiana, by escapement rate. Now, when you look at that, it's showing that overfishing is occurring. So that's when you see that dip in that line going below the target. They have a limit and a target, and it's actually below the limit is what it is. And that's why Wildlife Fisheries, they brought this to the commission and said, look, our escapement rate dropped. It's below the limit. So we have to sit down and figure out what we can do to get it back.
Yeah.
And what they use to do that is a reduction percentage. So that's like, this is the hardest thing I've seen people to try to comprehend as far as like the limit changes. And I've had a lot of gripes on people, they're like, oh, why does the slot have to change? Why can't they just cut it down, whatever amount of fish or 4 fish or, leave the slot the same? I'm like, look, the fishery science, we use a reduction percentage. So you can't, we take our 5 redfish, that's our slot right now, and don't worry about the one over, it's kind of irrelevant. But take our slot, 16 to 27 inches, 5 fish. You can't say, let's do a 35% or 50% reduction just straight up, because we can't cut a fish into pieces,
Right.
You can't keep half a fish.
Right.
So in fishery science is a little weird too. Not only that, that's the obvious thing, just the common sensual thing. Also, some of your fish, especially like redfish, they weigh more of that, like the reduction percentage can be wavered either way, because if they take the upper slot down a little bit, it'll do more per se than bringing the lower slot up.
Right.
So you have to factor that in too. That's a whole nother equation. So it's a lot of moving pieces, and it's a lot of science that people just don't get. And that's what I've been trying to explain to people. Like they don't just wake up and say, hey, we need to do something. Let's just go to 4 fish, leave the slot the same. That'll fix it. It's a scientific, it's done by science. It's a scientific thing. They don't just throw darts at a board and pick whatever works.
That's the part that drives me crazy, man, is you see all these people on social media making arguments like, how you can't argue with scientific data. Like,
yeah, man. I mean, and I get like, so, there's a lot of people that have been doing, I've been doing this for a little over 10 years now as far as guiding. But I mean, I grew up down here, born and raised, fishing, everything. And I always tell people, I'm like, man, when I was, 16, 17, running around my flatboat with my buddy Sean, I mean, like I told you earlier, I'm like, we had 45 speckled trout or something. We're like, damn, we got to get 50. That's just how I was born and raised. We grew up fishing Point LaHash a lot, and it was all about, getting a limit. And that's just the Louisiana mentality. And then as far as redfish goes, I woke up one day and I'm like, I just thought about it. I'm like, sight fishing really is what set it for me. And that mentality of like, hey, if I let this fish go, I could probably catch it, maybe not tomorrow, but another day.
Exactly.
And then like tagging fish, when Tag Louisiana became a thing, that really, I love doing that. And it was just really cool to see where the fish would travel and, somebody else catch it. And then guiding, like I always tell people, and people always ask me all the time, especially clients, they're like, do you ever get aggravated not being able to fish? I'm like, not a single day. I'm like, because I get so excited every time I see a redfish open its mouth. And if you don't, then you don't like fishing. That's all there is to it, I mean, I don't have to reel the damn thing in and, be the one catching it. I get just excited seeing them. So,
just being there,
just getting to experience somebody enjoying that is what I really enjoy. And just the fact of the matter, let's say, I release a redfish and I don't know, dad brings his kid fishing on the side of the road twice a year. Maybe the kid catches that fish that's tagged, and then the kid's like, man, this is really cool. They want to figure out more about it. And, that kid's going to think about that one day and be like, he might start thinking, man, that's really cool. I'm going to let this fish go or something like that. But I mean, like I always tell people, it's still cool. I have no problem with people wanting to keep them. I mean, I have all my buddies in Delacroix and Hopedale and all, and Homa and all over the place. I have a bunch of buddies that do the popping cork dead shrimp thing, and they kill a bunch of fish. But, my thing is like, when you look at the science and it matches up with our anecdotal evidence of us being on the water every day, seeing a decline, and you get a lot of people, I always tell people like, look, there's a lot more people that are on this conservation mindset as far as we need to do something to help it.
Yeah.
You're only going to hear the loudest people in the room, you know. We all love to look at Facebook and look at people with 100 comments on a rant. Everybody loves that stuff, you know. Let that one or two, you know, people just let them go. That's kind of irrelevant, you know. Those people, for more often than not, I don't see those people in Baton Rouge at those meetings, man. I don't see them doing anything I don't see them picking up a piece of trash at the dock, you know. I don't see them doing anything for the fishery. So
Yeah.
I always tell people, I'm like, if you're not going to do one thing for this fishery, you know, do one thing, throw one fish back. Instead of keeping 15 fish, keep 14, you know?
Yeah.
And people look at me and they're like, what's that going to do? I'm like, well, if you fish 200 days a year and you catch your limit most days, it's a lot of extra fish.
A lot of fish.
I'm sure on that tough day, it's freaking 10 a.m. and you got 2 or 3 fish in a box. You'd sure like an extra couple hundred fish in a marsh.
No doubt.
And just think if everybody did that, you know, if
Mhm.
everybody did their part, if everybody picked up one piece of trash in that marsh, man. Like we were just talking about it earlier. We're sitting over here in Texas at Sam Rayburn right now, and you can't find a piece of trash around this place.
No, man, it's beautiful out here.
Yeah, I mean, it's so pretty just everywhere you go. And I go to Florida a lot in the summertime and hanging out with the family over there, and everything's so pretty. And, you know, it's just my thing, it's you have to be a steward of the marsh too. Everybody should be a steward, it doesn't matter if you keep fish or you throw them back, whatever. Everybody can be a steward of our fishery, you know.
Absolutely.
To respect it, just show it some respect, you know. Pick up some trash. If you see somebody throw something, like go tell them something. Like that's not cool, you know.
Right.
Throw a fish back here and there, you know. Help somebody out in the marsh, you know. We get so caught up in that. Oh, he's in my spot, doing all this stuff, you know. On a good bite, and this guy ruined it. I mean, educate the person. Maybe they don't have a clue, you know.
Exactly.
Everything goes a long way, and as far as, you know, people against it, there are some people against it. You're always going to have people against anything.
Right.
We could go on Facebook Live right now and say there's, you know, the sky's raining orange, and somebody's going to be like, you're lying. That's bullshit, you know, and they're going to come up with some idea of why. And at the end of the day, I've just learned to just ignore everything because there's definitely way more people that want to see this change because they've seen what our fisheries should be.
Yep.
And it's not what it is right now. It's a simple truth of the matter.
Yeah. It's just going to take more of us speaking out about it. I hear you talk about it on your podcast, how important it is for people to show up to these meetings.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's what I tell people. I'm like, look, just show up. I don't care which side you're on.
Right.
Come tell me, like, show up and let's sit down and have a civilized conversation about why you think that. Because I'm sure there's a few things you're not thinking about.
Right.
I tell everybody, I'm like, look, I don't claim to be this know-all person when it comes to anything, but I will put my knowledge of a redfish up there with just about anybody. Not so much of the fact that I've been doing it for so long, because there's way more people that have been doing it way longer than me.
Right.
I mean, some of my good friends have been doing it for 30 plus years, you know. It's not that, but it's my time on the water and experience partnering with, I know the science behind it. And I take pride in knowing, watch out, those things might get you there, bro. But I take pride in knowing the science because, like, I enjoy it so much. And that's going back when I was a kid, you know. I just always wanted to know how things work scientifically, and especially fish and all that. Like, I've, you know, I could tell you just about anything you need to know about the stock assessment, how fishery science work, because I wanted to know because I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I was trying to tell you earlier. It's kind of this stalemate between wildlife fisheries that everybody just looks at, you know, they hear the words wildlife fisheries Louisiana and they just see an agent, you know, writing them a ticket, which that's not the case. You know, most encounters with the agent are pretty cool anyway. Our agents, they bust their ass out there. There's way less of them than there needs to be. Their job's pretty freaking dangerous. I wouldn't want anything to do with, especially duck hunting, with people and guns, and you just never know, man. Stupid people in this world, but
plenty of them.
But you know, that's what they think. They don't think of, you know, the biologists that are busting their ass up there. Like, I tell people, you know, Patrick Banks and Jason Adrians and Joe West and Dr. Isaacs and all them, and Chris Schiebel and all. I mean, they're up there. They're not up there trying to make our fishery worse.
Of course.
Like, it blows my mind when somebody's like, oh, they're full of shit. I'm like, I mean, what do you think they did? You think they just spent 2,000 hours working on this because they knew it was a lie.
They just made it.
I mean, they're not,
like,
and second of all, they're not making $500,000 up there. I don't know where these people think they're getting paid, but
right.
like I told you earlier, you don't get paid to be on the good side of politics.
Nope.
Nobody's paying you to do, the right thing.
There ain't nobody stuffing the pockets of them to do the right thing.
Absolutely. There's nobody stuffing their pockets for fixing a fishery that needs to be fixed. I'm like, they have absolutely no reason to make anything up. They did their science, and their science showed that there's a decline that we need to do something about. Our anecdotal evidence of us on the water every day, a lot of people have agreed with it, and you're always going to have a few naysayers, so let them be,
Yeah.
But it's just something that, it drives me nuts when I see people just trashing on walleye fisheries. And I've gotten on the commission before just because, like, it's different in how it works. The commission, the biologists basically, they do their stock assessment, right?
Mhm.
Biologists, and they take it to our commission, our walleye fisheries commission. And they say, hey, this is what we found. This is what we think, this is what we think we should do based on the science.
Right.
That's without anybody, any public opinion or anything. They take it to the commission. The commission has a public meeting. Like I told you, first Thursday of every month, the commission has a public meeting. Anybody can go up there. You can rant and rave about whatever you want. You can go up there and complain that they need to up the limit on iguanas running around if we have that. They don't. They're up there. That's their public duty, is to listen to you speak.
Right.
You get 2.5 minutes or whatever it is up there, and they are literally doing nothing but listening to you. So there's your chance right there. Say your piece. But anyway, they bring it to the commission. The commission holds a meeting, right? They get, ideas from the public, and they kind of mash it all together. They're that liaisons between the public and the biologists. Let's say all the guides and all the recreational fishermen got up there, and they're like, what are y'all talking? Like, we're smoking them. There's thousands of redfish every day. Like, okay, so then the commission's going to look at the biologists and be like, look, maybe we need to change some of the parameters. Something's different,
Yeah.
But that's not the case with this. I don't know of anybody that can absolutely, like, without a doubt, argue that fact. It's just not what it should be.
Right.
And at the end of the day, this is a change for more fish. And if you're against it, then you're against having more fish for everyone. Like, even if you think it's good and you don't think anything needs to be done, why not make it better?
Exactly.
Why not? Like, don't you want it to be better? So, so the commission does that. They hold those meetings. They kind of get an idea what the public thinks, and they work to finalize a notice of intent, is what it's called. They take the notice of intent, and we're still under the comment period right now. So anybody has anything they want to say, send it to the email Walleye Fisheries. It's straight to Jason Adrian's inbox. I think it's jadrians@wlf.gov. And we'll put that in the notes or something to make sure it's perfect. But you could and say whatever you want. Say if you want to send them an email and say you want redfish to be blue instead of red, do that. I don't really care. But if you want to be meaningful and you actually have something you want to say, maybe you think you like the 50% reduction, which is what we are offered right now, 50% reduction. Which it's a rebuild timeline. I'll use the word rebuild loosely because it's not really the correct scientific term, but that's the easiest for the public to understand. But it's like a rebuild timeline of about 10 years. And that should put our stock back on track in that time frame.
Yeah.
So we did a 50% reduction, and that's basically saying they're reducing the limit by 50%, and that's go back to that fact that we can't cut fish in half. It's done scientifically. That's how they came up with the 18 to 24 with no overs and 3 fish. So anyway, we get back to that. We finalize the notice of intent, which is coming up October 5th. They'll finalize it. The legislature and, like the Senate and all that, the House of Natural Resources, they have 30 days to either have a meeting and rebuttal it and, have a vote on it. Again, it's a public meeting. Now, the only thing that sucks about that meeting is typical Louisiana fashion. They only are required to give us 24-hour notice. That's why we've been so hard of pushing this to say, to anybody, to the governor, to anybody that wants to listen, like, hey, this is too damn important to give a 24-hour notice.
Right.
Let us set a date. because we know there's going to be a few people that want to rebuttal it. So let's set a date. Let's set a date. Let's get everybody there. Because, I mean, we know, let's let people say their piece, let people speak, you know, even if it's a week, you know, a couple days, give us something, you know. So they'll have that meeting and they'll vote on it right there. If they vote it in and, you know, majority votes takes it, it'll be be written a regulation probably by the first of the year.
Yeah.
Now, I really doubt that they're going to do this, but if the legislature was to not set a meeting in those 30 days, it just goes straight to being a new regulation.
Yeah.
So they don't have to meet. They only have to meet if a couple of them want to rebuttal it, you know. But that'll be another public thing. Everything's done publicly. I know people gripe about our government, and yes, I agree. It is old fashioned, and there's a lot of hoops to jump through, and a lot of babies to, you know, kiss and palms to shake.
Yep.
But that's just how it goes. And we still, not to say we don't have our say, we have our say. You could speak in front of the commission. You could speak in front of the legislature. I've done it many times for the pogie boats. I mean, I've been the only damn person there in the whole state speaking against the pogie boat stuff before. So that's why it drives me nuts when I see people complain and all. And I tell them, like, look, come with me to the meeting then. You want to say something again? I'd rather you, instead of you send me a Facebook message, or, you know, in a rebuttal for me, come with me to the next meeting and speak against me right after me. Come on, let's do that. You tell me. Because if you're going to tell me that over a message, then you're not, and you don't want to go up there and actually do something in person, then you're not that passionate about it, obviously, for one.
Yeah.
And it's just a certain respect for it, you know, like at least have the respect and decency to back up, you know, what you're saying, and do some research on it, man.
That's
like we have the whole freaking internet in our pocket.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts when I see somebody post something and they're like just blatantly wrong based on, you know, the stock assessment or anything for that matter, you know. I mean, I know this. I've seen people say that they were talking about something where, you know, some fish was eating all the redfish eggs off the redfish's nest. I'm like, Jesus, man, like, come on now. One Google search and that's fixed, you know. I mean, little things like that, just I can't deal with that stuff. If you're going to have an actual meaningful thing, and, you know, bring your sources, show me what you looked up, you know. I mean, that's how I figured it out. One day I was like, what the hell's a reduction percentage? What's spawning potential ratio, you know?
Yeah.
How do they do these things? You know, how does the commission change the regulations? I looked it all up. I figured it all out.
Yeah.
There wasn't many people to ask at the time, and I just was like, I'm going to figure this crap out on my own if I have to. And that's pretty much what it took. And we have a lot of people really doing a lot of things to help us now. Like, I've been really impressed with, and I'll tell everybody, you know, there's my history with organizations down here. I just have always just tried to stay away and, you know, just say my piece at the meeting and not really do anything for anybody, because I just don't feel that we get the same respect back from whatever organization it may be throughout the whole country, for that matter.
Yeah.
But I will say that Tony Frederick at the Saltwater Guide Association has really stepped up, and he pretty much came in and was like, look, I'm not going to make $1 on this, and I don't know what I have to do to prove it to you, but I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
And I was very reluctant, because I've heard that many times from many people, and there's always, you know, there's always some money to be made, some backdoor to be paid or something, you know. But he really stepped up, and he really knows the science and helped me with a lot of the science that I didn't know, and helped me. I know the science really well. Like I told you, I'm like, I could tell you pretty much anything you need to know about a redfish. I didn't know the politics. I didn't want to know the politics. I never wanted to be the person that somebody was like, oh, what are you doing up there in Baton Rouge on a Thursday? You know, when there's not even talking about redfish today. I'm like, well, they're going to hear about it if they don't want to talk about it. But so that really helped, having some people like that, and just having, you know, people like Dave been up there a few meetings. My buddy Dave Best, he's been up there a few meetings with me where we're the only two in there, and, you know, and you get the commission talking about stuff, and it starts clicking in their minds, and just doing that the past really year, and I think it's made them do their own research too, because they're not biologists, they're politicians. They're just up there, they're appointed, you know, and they're up there, and I agree. They should know it. I think it should be a panel of biologists in all, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, if you're making a decision on something, you should be
Yes.
educated
I
on it.
mean, but that's all. I mean, we're not changing that. We're
Right.
just trying to fix redfish. Don't
Right.
worry about politics another day. Hopefully never.
Hopefully
But
not.
but yeah, I mean, I think they really stepped up. They did their research.
Yeah.
You know, they told Jason and Patrick, like, look, we want you to sit down with us and explain this whole stock assessment to us
Mhm.
and how it works. And they did, you know, on their own time, which I thought was super cool. And when you'd ask them a question, they'd understand it. And
Yeah.
that's just it. That was once I saw that, it kind of made me say, wow, like we really, for once in the eyes of the public might have a say so, you
Yeah.
know, and that was pretty cool it was that meeting in July. I think it was July 6th. It was that first Thursday of July. And I mean, we kind of knew that they were going to propose a notice of intent, and it was for a 35% reduction,
Mhm.
which was on a rebuild timeline of like 30 plus years, which is just crazy because how many things are going to change in 30 years, man?
A lot.
And my biggest thing on it was like you're depleting a whole generation of ever seeing anything good.
Yeah.
Like that's, I mean, I'll remember the good days, but like my son, I mean, he's gonna be 40, you know, and maybe it'll be good. And maybe that's a big maybe.
Yeah.
But doing it, and then we pretty much told him like, and I was a little nervous. I mean, I tell everybody, I'm like, look, I was kind of nervous to really say anything to push it because, you know, I didn't really know that breaking point. At what point do we push them over and they just ditch the whole thing? You
Right.
know, I'm like, I was kind of walking on eggshells, and we had a couple of people stand up and they were like, yeah, I mean, let's do it. Let's push for 50%. And they were like, the commission was like, yeah, that sounds good to us. Let's rebuild it faster. Why not? You know, it's a genius idea. And I think, I mean, it was like a surreal moment. It was like, holy crap, you know, we do have a voice in this. You know, we can do something. That the ways of our government actually are working in our favor right now, the way they're supposed to. You know, I mean, they're honestly, they're public servants up there.
They're appointed to work for us.
Exactly. You know, so it's pretty cool. And I would have never, if you'd have told me this 6 months ago, I would have laughed and said, "There's no way." You know, a couple of years ago, yeah. I mean, I couldn't even get a single person to even you know consider saying anything about anything. You know, a couple of years ago. I mean, shoot, I remember posting videos about the poke boat 6, 7, 8 years ago, and people are like, "Yeah, just don't talk about that too loud." I mean,
just brush it under the rug.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool though. I think it's more so cool that we're seeing that change in mentality. That's the biggest thing. The change in mentality is what I want to see more than laws
100%.
and rules and regulations. You know?
Yeah, I mean that's the whole reason I started this. I just hope to get good information out there, conversations like this, to change some minds, change the way some people think about it. Let them get good information to make a right call, not just an opinion off of how they feel.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's what's so cool about now is, like I said, like everybody can be educated on any decision they make. You know, it just takes a few seconds of research or reach out to somebody. I tell people all the time, like, and I get people ask me all the time, they're like, "Do you ever get tired of saying the same thing over and over to everybody?" And I mean, shoot, you could ask Nicole. There's some 50-minute phone call, 2-hour phone calls I'll have with somebody. And she's like, "Who's that?" I'm like, "I don't know. Some guy that called me and asked about the redfish reduction." And she's like, "Why were you on the phone for 2 hours?" I'm like, "Because if it takes that, I don't care." You know, every person that usually if I can explain it the way that it's supposed to be interpreted by the public, you know, and not in that just scientific numbers and models mentality, people you click so fast.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, really? Like, oh, that's all it is? Like, that makes sense, you know?" And they're usually like, "Oh, yeah, let's do that. That's great," you know? And that's I just want to tell people. I'm like, I never get tired of it because at the end of the day, any one person that I can get to see, you know, the science behind it, or just to be more educated on the subject, that's better for us. That's better for the marsh. That's better for our future generations, you know?
Right.
I mean, it's hopefully we can see it, what it's supposed to be, what it was. And I think 2017 was the year that things started turning a little bit. And it was a great year in 2017.
Yeah.
Had a lot of fish, saw a lot of fish every day. And That's the most recent time. But I mean, 10, 12 years before that, it was even, more than what it should be, better than even then,
Yeah.
So hopefully we get to see that in shorter than 10 years, even. That'd be super cool. But at the end of the day, I always tell people, like, this isn't for us, man. This is for the next generation.
Right.
We're literally playing games. If we're not doing anything for the fishery, we're just playing games with our future generations.
Yeah.
So we're playing, we're hanging it over our kids' heads, saying, "Look, we know something needs to be done, but we don't care. We just want ours, and we're out of here.
Yeah.
But
now there's something me and you talked about earlier. Kind of backtrack just a little bit, but it's some information I wanted to include in here. You made a comment earlier about how on this tightening up the slot limit, how tightening up that upper slot number is way more important. There's a reason for that. And why is that?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as how redfish are managed and that escapement rate, it's mainly to get those smaller fish into the spawning stock. So it's pretty much like, a lot of people always ask me about sizes of redfish. Majority of your redfish that are in the marsh over the slot, like 27 to 30 inches,
Mm-hmm.
those are mostly your immature females that haven't been to the stock yet. Your males are going to be in that spawning stock before.
Mm-hmm.
And they just because they grow a little bit faster and they mature a little bit faster, and they don't grow as big as the females too. Females take a little longer to mature. It's still in that 5 to 7 year range or so. I mean, they pretty much any study that's ever been done determines a redfish gets to about 27 inches in around 5 years, and that's pretty much everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But it has been shown that the females take a little bit longer. They mature a little bit slower.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I tell people. I'm like, it really, that 27 to 30 inch range is so crucial, especially when they're in the marsh and people are killing those. Like, I always tell people, I'm like, y'all don't realize when you're killing a lot of those fish, especially in the marsh, it's a lot of our females that may be in the spawning stock next year.
Mm-hmm.
And
because they don't start spawning until that size, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, and you start cutting into fish. I'd rather see somebody kill an 18-inch redfish than that 29-incher.
Absolutely.
That 18-incher. I mean, it's not part of the spawning stock. It's not really going to hurt us. How many fish are going to come from that 29-inch female that you killed? That
Right.
really doesn't taste that good anyway. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
You're not going to fight anybody on that fact.
Yeah. Well, what are some things that just ordinary anglers like myself, what are some things that we can do just to help out this red fishery? We've talked about a few things, but anything else that you think?
So the main thing I've been telling people, like I said, we have that meeting coming up October 5th. Anybody that can come, the more the merrier.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. Give me a call before. If you want to speak, that's great. If you don't, you just want to go and see what it's about, that's cool too. I'll be up there. I'll speak as I usually do, and we'll have a good crew there. And that's pretty much just to show support for the commission. They'll finalize that notice of intent. But what I've been telling a lot of people, the main thing right now is send your comments into that Jason Adrian's email.
Mm-hmm.
Send your comments in either way. Like I said, for or against it. At least if you're going to be against it, have a valid reason. Don't just tell me because you like to eat, more redfish or that bigger size or something. Have a valid reason to it. Maybe you want to see a 50% reduction. You're fine with that. But maybe you want to see, a wider slot, which you can have a wider slot at 2 fish.
Mm-hmm.
This notice of intent is 3 fish, though, which that's pretty much what everybody thought the public would like better.
Right.
Which I think that's in more people's eyes. Has proven to be less of a, I've heard less complaints.
Mm-hmm.
Just because that seems to be what everybody wants, to keep more smaller fish.
Yeah.
So for eating wise, but send your comments into that. Email your senators, email your legislators, email, your anybody, email anybody you think that, I mean, pretty much everybody in our government has a say for any of this,
Yeah.
Let it be your district attorney or something, or let it be, your representative for your parish. Tell them, ask them about it, see what they think. For one, if they don't know anything about it, tell them about it, educate them on it, tell them like, hey, this is why I think you should go up there and, be a part of this. Because I mean, everybody who's anybody in our government can have a say so on this and can help, convey the fact that we need to do something. And the more people on that, the better for it, and that's pretty much the main thing now. There's no, there's no GoFundMe's out there. Don't be doing anything like that. There's nobody needs any money. Nobody's asking for any money. Money is not going to do this. This is a government thing. Like, go out there and send your comments in. And that's pretty much all we can do right now, and show up to the meetings. That's the main thing, Hopefully we can get a date for the legislature meeting, but if not, I'll be there, and I'll have another crew that's there too. Whether it's 24 hours notice or not, which sucks, but that's how it's going to be. My clients know. I've told them numerous times. I'm like, look, if I tell you the day before we're not fishing tomorrow, you can come to Baton Rouge with me. You can hang out in the city or find somebody else to fish, because this is bigger than anything.
Right.
This is bigger than that day of fishing, and I'll be up there. And everybody's cool with it. You tell your clients you're fighting for more fish. Who's not gonna? Like I said, at the end of the day, this is a fight for more fish in the marsh.
Yeah.
And nobody's gonna complain about more fish. It's just the fact of how we've been over the years, man. Like, the best example I've ever heard is, you look, I think Shane said it one day, my buddy Shane Mayfield. He's always got a few notes of wisdom in there. He's been doing it for a while. But pretty much, you look at how we've managed our fishery over the years. And if we had one redfish left in the marsh, even today, I feel like somebody would be trying to see, who's the highest bidder. How can we get the most money for this one redfish?
Yeah.
Whereas everywhere else in this damn country, just about, they're going to be like, how do we save this one redfish?
Yeah.
That's the mentality I want to see change.
100%. That's I listened to that on your podcast, and that really hit home. It's like, man, if we could change that mentality of Louisiana to think like that, it would just make a huge difference.
Oh yeah. That's the main thing. It's a mentality change, we're trying to change regulations too, but it all, and I've always talked to people about this thing called the shifting baseline theory, which is pretty much a theory that, I don't know, somebody much smarter than me came up with, on how, like, generationally we see a change in baselines of things, and we see it in fishing a lot, whereas, like, what I think is really good and bad is far different than what somebody who's 75, 80 thinks was really good and bad,
Right.
And it's far different than somebody that just started guiding 2 years ago, or just started fishing a couple of years ago, and different from our next generation. So we don't, how things change, and it works the same way. That's kind of a bad thing of how that theory works. A good thing is we could change the baseline of what the mentality needs to be as far as conservation in Louisiana. It doesn't have to be a fill the box, fill the freezer thing. It's been like that for so long, and we've seen other examples of it. Texas was like that.
Yeah.
Their speckled trout fishery literally crashed. It was pretty much nobody was catching anything, and it's far different than our estuary. I know that. Everybody always tells me that. I'm like, look, Louisiana is a one and only.
Exactly.
There's nothing like it on the planet. I get it. I know, believe me. But there's examples of fisheries crashing, and it all comes down to a human element. I tell everybody, humans are the most common denominator in this. Yes, the marsh is changing, but you know why the marsh is changing? Because of humans. Because we dug freaking canals through the damn thing.
Yeah, we dammed up
the Mississippi River, and we're building multi-billion-dollar concrete structures to pump it back in and just hope it works. There's so many things, but we just got to do the little bit that we can when we can do it. All goes back to just do something every single day you can for the marsh, for redfish, for your buddy, for your family, something, for the whole freaking planet.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we're getting a little bit towards the end of this. So one thing I wanted to include in here is you do guide. What has been some of your favorite ways to catch them lately? People always just come to me and as like, everybody's like, oh, you do fly fishing redfish. I'm like, yeah, I love
fly fishing and stuff like that. I don't really consider myself a fly fisherman. People always ask me, they'll see me like do a video of me flipping a bait caster at a drum or something like that. And they're like, "Oh, you don't fly fish anymore?" I'm like, I don't know where the stigma of fly fishing came from, but it's definitely, this whole mentality of fly fishing has changed the past couple of years for sure. As far as like, I see so many people, they're like, "Oh, I'm not touching that spinner rod." I'm like, well, I'll tell you what, dude. If I think I catch more fish on that spinner rod and that bait caster, I'll throw that fly rod in the freaking water. Like, I mean, I love catching them on fly. I think honestly, my favorite, I tell people this all the time, and that's what I've been so mad about the past couple of years, just because we've been lacking in slot fish. That's the biggest thing I've noticed is our lack of slot fish in the marsh. And really my favorite thing is like May and June. It was just always, and we can still get some good days to do it. But my favorite was always throwing frogs, like soft body frogs and ribbit frogs for redfish.
Yeah.
And May and June was just always so good. We had that fresh grass in Delacroix and Holma and all. That lime green snot grass was starting to grow. And I mean, popper flies are cool and all, but dude, something about, you see like KVD and Hackney and all these guys on TV, Dean Rojas and all of them throwing frogs and catching 10-pound bass. And that's awesome. I'd love to do that one day.
No doubt.
But dude, something when a redfish he's got to get out of the water because they're bottom feeders by nature, they're not built for that. So when he's like completely out of the water, torpedoing behind a frog, I mean, that's just some cool stuff. That's probably one of my favorite ways to catch a redfish to this day.
Well, before we finish this up, is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with? Any special note or advice or message?
No, man. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, I could go on forever about the redfish stuff. Like I told you before, we can go on forever about stuff like that. But, I just, like I said before, just try to do one thing. And I kind of started using this hashtag all over the internet called One for Louisiana. And I love seeing people kind of getting behind that, using it for like, releasing a fish or something like that. And that it just all comes back to just do one thing that benefits this state, as a whole, or the whole world, honestly. But I've mainly said that because of redfish. Do one thing that benefits the fishery every day. Just one thing, whether it's throwing a fish back, whether it's cleaning up the marsh. Always go back to clean up the marsh because we got too much freaking trash in that marsh, dude.
No doubt.
There's nothing worse than when I'm driving out on like a crispy October, November morning. You got that pretty sunrise creeping over the gold marsh, and there's freaking bottles or whatever it may be in the marsh. I'm like, why do we do that, man? Just pick it up. Just pick up your crap, people. Humans, dude. It always comes back. I always tell people, I'm like, humans. We just we mess stuff up, and we gotta take care of this place. We don't get another one.
No, this is it. Well, we're gonna wrap it up here. These bugs are tearing us up. If you haven't yet, go ahead and check out Ty's podcast. He does with two of his buddies, the Redfish podcast. Really good info. I've really enjoyed it so far. But that's gonna be it for this. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and until next time, y'all take care.